disc golf, the Contrabassoon, and making reeds with Miles Maynor. Stay inspired. Could you share more about your own realizations and learning what we don't know and filling those gaps?
I've actually been doing something interesting lately that is maybe helping me to explore learning in general. I have my old ways of, getting an etude from one speed to another and the little rhythms that I do and that sort of thing. But there's been, in my incredible amount of free time, I've been playing a lot of disc golf. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's like regular golf, but there's frisbees and you throw them in a basket and it has all the same scoring rules as regular golf. It's really hard, but really fun. And so it's been snowing here lately, and one way to lose a disc is to throw it into a muddy field with a bunch of snow and never find it again. And so I thought, well, I don't know if I can keep practicing this right now for months, and it's kind of what's keeping me sane. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll practice my putting, because that's close. If I throw a disc 10 feet, I'm not going to lose it. So anyway, what I didn't realize is this has become a journey of learning from scratch. Like right now, I have so much baggage with the bassoon. I've been playing the bassoon for 20-something years, and there's a lot of emotional stuff going on with that, and self-worth, and all sorts of things. Competitiveness, and it's part of my identity and everything. Disc golf isn't. And I'm just trying to get a little bit better at it. And I'm trying to do something very simple. I'm trying to take this frisbee and throw it in that basket over there. And I saw on YouTube, there was a guy that downloaded an app, and it's a putting scoring app. And you do a challenge. It's a 30-day challenge. It's what this guy is embarking on. So he shows up every day for 30 days, and he throws 100 shots into the basket, scores at different places, and you stand different places, all sorts of things. So I've been doing that. So I've been doing that about 26 of the 30 days. And it's been a really interesting learning experience. The main thing that I'm learning from it is the importance, at least for me right now, is to not actually worry about the results, which seems kind of backwards. Like the whole reason I'm practicing, whether it be bassoon or putting, is to get a better result. But if I'm worried about the results, what ends up happening is negative energy starts becoming a part of the process for me. And if it gets too much negative feedback, maybe it just won't show up again. Maybe it'll be easier just to not practice putting because I'm afraid of, not being good at putting. Well, that's the whole reason I started. So, and the same thing with the bassoon, it's like, well, I should probably play for other people because it's good for me, but I don't know what's going to happen. So maybe I just won't. Well, so it's a weird feedback loop. And then, well, you're not good at playing for other people because you never played for people. And why would you want to play for people if you're not good at playing for people? So then you keep not playing for people. So it can become a negative feedback loop. So this putting challenge is the only thing I have to do is show up. It doesn't matter how good it is. And I've had days where I putt well and days where I am terrible, even though I've been showing up for 20 days in a row. But if I don't care about the results, I just continue to show up. And so it's kind of, it's been a really nice experience to just learn how important it is to not care about the results that day. I haven't been really in control of the results on one given day. Now, if I look at the scores from the beginning to this near end of this 130-day challenge, things have gotten better. And it's because I'm practicing. And now if I went out there today and putted, it'd probably be better than the first day. But I can't force that to happen. It's just through, I would say, creative experimentation and creative practicing and just showing up every day. So that's been really interesting. So I might try that a little bit more with the bassoon. I mean, I show up every day anyway with my bassoon one way or another, but the result is so important to me that sometimes I just would rather not risk it. And so I play less, or I don't take risks, or whatever. The result is so important, it can become paralyzing. And so it's been interesting to just not care about the result. And so I just show up and there's no burden, and I've gotten better anyway. And so there also in that practice, an ease of throwing has kind of become part of the process. There's a relaxation. It doesn't feel like a risk to throw the disc. And sometimes playing the bassoon in front of my students or something seems like a risk. Like if I don't demonstrate, then I'm ahead of the game. But if I play, maybe it won't sound good. That sort of thing. And then I end up not playing. It's like, well, that's the whole point. That's the whole reason you went to school, is so that you do play. So I'm kind of exploring that. That's been very interesting. And specifically about gaps that in my playing. One thing above all, I think can create gaps or exploit the gaps that are already there to make them bigger gaps. And that is practicing tension into my playing. This is new to me, maybe not to anybody else, but I had never really thought of the fact that when I'm playing it slowly, slow practice, I'm mainly thinking technical passages. That's my hardest thing for me. When I'm practicing it slowly, I should also be practicing how I want it to feel in my mind and in my body. I'm not just slow practicing it so I can exert greater control and physical tension or mental tension or worry. And so it's been interesting working up an etude from slow tempo to a quicker tempo. And as soon as there's any mental tension or the mind wants to grab any control, that's my first sign that I need to go back to the slower tempo and play with more ease and repeat and coax that ease back in. And then as I speed it up a little bit, my only goal is for my mind to stay relaxed, even if it means that new mistakes are found. That's okay, which I didn't realize. I thought it was play it perfectly. The only way to do it is play it slowly and then speed it up a little bit. And then that has to be perfect too, because you already did the practicing at the slower tempo. Not the case. You speed it up a little bit and you just stay relaxed, and new mistakes happen, which is a good thing. You're exploring and finding what you need to practice. And the only way you're finding those things is actually by letting go and letting the things happen that are going to happen. I can definitely get up to a certain tempo with mental tension and play it accurately. But then there's I always hit a ceiling, used to hit a ceiling where it's like, okay, well, if I go any faster, the wheels are going to come off. No matter how many times I practice it slowly, I hit that ceiling. Ben came and said something really interesting on Zoom. I think it was during the Meg Quigley symposium. He said, at a slow tempo, you can play through unnecessary tension. He was talking about necessary versus unnecessary tension. And he said, that's the one issue with the slow practicing, is you can have lots of unnecessary tension physically or mentally and play through it despite the unnecessary tension. But it will reveal its ugly head when you try to speed it up and you're kind of shackled in a way. And that's how it's felt for me. And it's been very interesting to practice and have relaxation be at the top. Only necessary tension and no other tension be at the top of the checklist. And as I speed it up, the other thing that I've been repeating is a relaxed run through. And so even at the faster tempo, my body's doing what I've been repeating, which is relaxation. It's been very interesting. So that's new to me. I don't know if anyone else has any similar experiences like that. I'd like to know.
What I do find is that one of the things that Miles was talking about, that some of my students, and I've seen others also, and I'm also done it myself. You're at an audition, or maybe for the students it's also the juries and things like that. But especially in auditioning, they're like, I have to win this job. I have to win. And they put so much pressure on themselves. And sometimes the times when it's like, it'd be really great to win this, but it's okay if I don't, are the times that people actually are able to, perform in a better way. But totally, Miles, what you're talking about as well with uh, I've gotten that good advice about only using those muscles that are required for the task at hand for a while. But I sometimes find that I also get into a mindset that, oh my gosh, I'm using the wrong muscles, and then that makes me mad, and that makes me tighten up all the more. So knowing that I should only be using certain ones, and then actually doing it, the execution side of things, and getting our brain out from creating issues for us is part of the learning process too.
Another thing that I've realized in my practicing is I think I've spent, except for, I'm sure I've gone past this before, but I often am in the habit of practicing it until I've gotten it right a couple of times. So let's say some quick passage, it's got to be at 120, and sometimes I get it up there to 120 and I get it accurately. And then I think, okay, well, I have now played it at 120. I can play it at 120. Well, no, those aren't the same statement. You have played it at 120, and you also cannot play it at 120 whenever you feel like it. And that's been really interesting. For when I first hit it at 120, usually it's some sort of, I've been thinking about something and I've got just the right cue at just the right time in my mind to make sure this finger moves fast enough. And, oh, we got a 120 in there barely, basically. It's not that my muscles find it to be most comfortable to play it at 120. And I think that might be the actual goal, where your natural way of playing it is the way that you need to play it, rather than, well, if you stand on one foot and you think about this right thing and you give it 3 tries, then you get it at 120. And so then if I'm trying to play it in a recital or something and it's one shot and my mind's thinking about all sorts of things, and I have to also be thinking of that one cue and which one was it and at the right time, yeah, right. There's no way. Of course I'm so nervous. And so I'd always thought of the I don't. People say it a lot of different ways, but if you can play it once, then you can't play it at all, or But if you can play it 1,000 times, then you're finally prepared. That sort of thing. I always thought that was just sort of a hardcore practicer kind of thing, and it was intimidating, and I didn't understand it. I think it's more that you just have to you have to do enough repetitions in the right mindset until your muscles and your mind are comfortable at that whatever that new goal may be. It's interesting. Obviously, still thinking about it a lot, but I am constantly working on my little Mildy scale etudes, and I usually get them up to the point where, well, with a lot of mental thought and a lot of chatter from my mind, I can squeak it out at this right tempo. And I think the goal is, well, can you get it to the point where you're playing it and you don't need to listen to all those cues? Because when someone else is in the room, they might have other chatter going on, and then it's not going to go so well. Very interesting. Michael Burns was right. That's what I'm thinking about. Not until you get it right, and do it until you can't get it wrong. Yeah. And I feel like I could read that in a way that's like, oh, wow, I just, it could be more intimidating. But I feel like if I practiced it the right way and my mind doesn't tense up while I'm playing it, I'm a bit more robust. I can roll with the punches a bit more. I don't need absolute silence so that I can play the following passage, It's just what's most comfortable for me.
Are there any classes or courses that come to mind from school or, even now that you would be interested in learning more about or enrolling and getting more skills?
Yeah, a couple of things. I've always been cognizant of how much I move in a day. Like I try to stay relatively in shape, but it's not been a passion of mine. I never played sports as a child or anything like that. But I feel like maybe if I had joined some sort of running team or learned a little bit more how to give back to my body, or nutrition or something like that, that probably would have been a good idea. I mean, I'm learning it now. But in school, I kind of just took advantage of the fact that I was young and it didn't really matter what I did. I was going to feel fine, you know. The other one that I would say, I know nothing about composers who aren't old, dead, and white men. And I think that would be, I know that's all the rage right now, and I hope it stays all the rage to get out there and play music of underrepresented composers. But clearly, when I was in school, that it just wasn't really covered because I don't know any of them, you know, or I'm learning them from my students. A lot of my students are saying, "Hey, I found this piece, and you know, she was born in 1975 or whatever, and listen to this piece, and it's fantastic." It's like, I don't know about it. This piece was around when I was in school, so that would have been a really good thing, for sure. And of course, I'm a stereotypical American in that I only speak English, and that is so irritating. Now that is something I can still fix. All of these things, luckily, I can still fix. But to be forced into a language class, that was really difficult and forced me to study a lot. And then, like it or not, I know how to speak conversational French. That would be lovely. But it was not forced upon me, and therefore I did not enroll. And I know jack diddly about other languages, basically. That would have been good too. I do have, for whatever reason, I think Rosetta Stone is having a hard time keeping up with all these apps on phones now. And so, for whatever reason, I have a lifetime subscription to Spanish that I didn't have to pay extra for. So now the constant guilt that I could have practiced Spanish today, it's there.
Maybe you could start with food or like parallel, learning Spanish with doing some fun.
That's true. We did make enchiladas today, so
okay,
I have to do the actual practicing.
Martin's made a really good point. Martin is a professional bassoonist in the Army. And Martin, are you doing physical training every morning?
It's a little weird now because of COVID. You can't be in like a lot of people in small spaces. But yeah, we have 6:30 to 8 a.m. every morning blocked out. We're supposed to be doing physical fitness stuff.
Whoa. I don't know the last time I did any physical fitness between 6:30 and 8.
I'm not, to be honest with you, with COVID, I'm not great at it. I tend to do mine at like 8 p.m. at night because I'm an evening person more than a morning person. But we're getting to the end of that for our job right now. We're going to probably March, April, going to have to go back every single morning at 6:30.
Wow. And do you guys do things all together? Do you have to all run together, or is it just do something in this gym?
It depends. It's always in our small groups. We have groups of 5 or 6 people, and we do all of it within the 5 or 6 people.
Oh, look at this amazing document that Michael Burns just sent.
This has been shared by a few people on some of the Facebook groups and things of that sort. But as Miles was saying, everybody is becoming much more aware of this. And so in the university setting, I mean, one of the big things that they've been talking about is decolonizing our curriculum and decentering from the dead white European, traditions. And so, that there's a lot of musics out there, not just the European tradition. And so this is actually a sort of a crowdsource type thing. You can actually, like if you know of a piece that's not listed there, you can, there's a way of submitting that to the author. But yeah, it's great to have this. I sent it out to my students the beginning of this academic year, and pretty much everybody is, chamber groups and solo pieces and stuff, they've been finding things to work on, which is great.
Is there bassoon and piano on here? I don't know if I saw it or not.
Should be, let's see.
Probably something. See, 2 bassoons, 3 bassoons. Oh, this is so great.
Also, there's a and there's overlap between them, but there's a institution called the Composer Diversity Group, and then there's the Institute for Composer Diversity or something similar. I'll find the links for those two and pop them in as well. But basically, on those, I think it's the Institute one, there is a searchable link where you can put in the instrumentation and you can say, I'm looking for some, bassoon and piano, and I want it to be by a transgender woman from this continent or something, and you can sort of use all these search terms. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, Trevor?
Well, I'm not a performer anymore. I actually sold my bassoon 2 years ago, so I'm out of the business of playing. But a lot of things that Miles has said today has driven home the things that are happening. One thing I'll share, and it's interesting because Michael and Martin, I both published some of their works, Michael and all that. So in deference to them, I will say that my biggest, hottest seller right now is Alyssa Morris, and her works are flying off the shelf. And so there's a great interest in women composers and quality ones. And obviously people are not only discovering it, but discovering that they love what she writes. And she's written a great bassoon sonata. So, that for us that are here, a lot of oboe stuff because she's an oboist. But I will say the other thing, Miles, that you said, and when you were talking about the golfing, the putting, and progress, and then you went into the language thing. Through the pandemic and all that, and since I'm not playing, you have to give yourself challenges and things to do. And so I felt exactly like you did. I thought, why do I only really speak English? I claim to speak German, but I don't. And so I've started Russian lessons with a tutor in Russia. He's really cheap because he's Russian. But the thing of saying that is that it's no different than practicing the bassoon, because I was getting very frustrated. I couldn't say that phrase, or I couldn't remember that vocabulary word. Things that happen when you were playing bassoon. But then when I look back, I've been doing it for 3 months now. I look back where I was before I started practicing or taking lessons and where I am now, and you realize you do accomplish things. Plus, you're keeping the brain cells active, which is really important. And in this day and age, we don't know what's going to be around the corner. So, give yourself things to do. So it was a light bulb moment for me, almost like, yeah. So my Russian is worthwhile because it's no different than putting. I am getting a little bit better, and I don't realize it until I look back what I couldn't say 2 months ago and I can't say now. So, so a few good positive comments there. Thanks for what you said about that, and glad to report that Alyssa is selling very well. And I've always, just as I will say a little self-promotion, I've always encouraged young composers. We know they're not going to sell hotcakes like hotcakes. Sometimes you sell 2 or 3 a year and that's it. But the point is, you have to have the repertoire out there and available for people to discover. And so I think that's a role. We're talking about playing, but I think the role as a publisher is to make sure that these pieces are easily accessible for people to find. And so, I have 2 pieces by Martin and at least a dozen with Michael, I think, that we've published, and they're wonderful. And they're, the problem is, and I'll finish. The problem is that there's actually too many good new pieces. We talk about diversity, and there's so many good choices now that it's hard to pick the 1 or 2 or 3 that you can really concentrate on and want to study. So it's a big smorgasbord of music that we have available to us, and we're starting to discover it thanks to lists like Michael is providing and all that. So it's going to happen. I think we're going to see big changes in repertoire in the next 5-10 years.
Miles, could you talk a bit more about your work on the orchestra social media team?
So I joined the Chicago Symphony social media team during the pandemic, near the beginning of it. And that only happened, it was kind of, being on a social media team is sort of a grind. You're always having to come up with another post, and not all of them go very far and that sort of thing. And, they had asked me I don't know why, but they had asked me a couple times, hey, can you join? There's just 3 gals running it. And I was like, nope. I had done that. I'd said no many years. That looks hard. I don't want to do it. And I don't know anything about it. I wasn't on Instagram anyway. I was like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. And anyway, the pandemic happened, the shutdown happened. People were starting to make those little Brady Bunch multi-screen videos playing with themselves. And the orchestra's photographer, who's a friend of mine, he reached out and was like, hey, are you going to make something? I was kind of hiding, This is back when it was like scary to record yourself and put it online, which is now the new normal. But at the time I thought, whoa, I'm not going to play a note for the next 30 days of this giant 30-day shutdown. And so anyway, so he reached out and he said, hey, you got to make something. I was like, okay. And so I made a couple things, and I used an app on my phone, but it had limits and that sort of thing. So I eventually tried out some like video editing software, and so I was just getting a little more computery. And then I think the social media team kind of asked again at that point. They're like, are you sure? Because you're kind of making a lot of posts on Facebook now, and it's all music-y stuff. It would be perfect. So I thought, okay, fine. So I joined, but, when there's nothing going on, it's really hard to make content about an orchestra that's not playing any concerts. So especially, this is like, April or May, when there was silence. We weren't doing a streaming thing online. Now we have this thing called CSO TV, and you can see us play in chamber groups, but nothing at the time. So I thought, okay, I need to make my own little series. So I created a series called Beyond the Practice Room, and it was all about what our musicians are doing during the shutdown, because we get a lot of interest from the patrons about the musicians' lives off stage. And I thought, well, this is perfect. That's all we're doing is off stage. So, and everyone has different hobbies, so that's a ton of material. So I would just contact people individually, because if you email the whole orchestra like send ideas, that's going to be a trashed email immediately. So I would use my friend points and call someone specifically and say, hey, Bill, Associate Principal Bassoon, you like making bagels, right? You're into baking. Are you doing that now? You want to send a video of you making bagels? So he'd send a bunch of stuff, and then I'd have to edit it into a video about his bagel making, that sort of thing. So I did about 10 episodes of that, which was, and especially if you're slow at video editing software, that is a lot of hours of editing. So it exploded my brain, but I feel like I provided something for a little while, maybe through August, something like that. I tried to do one a week, and I was the first one. So I did disc golf and showed my discs and everything. I think it's probably all on the CSO, the musicians of the Chicago Symphony, their Facebook page. There's a lot of Beyond the Practice Room. I think it's there. I think not on Instagram. Maybe on Instagram too. I should probably know that, right? I'm on social media too. But yeah, that's how I got corralled into that. But luckily, they're really chill about it, and the shutdown has been so much longer than we realized. And so I did that and kind of burned myself out. And they were happy to just watch me burn out for a while. And so we haven't posted anything in quite a while. But I don't know if anyone really cares right now. There's nothing going on. And when we go back, we're going to post a lot more, obviously. They were very good about that. It just takes such a diligence to remember, oh, yeah, it's, this holiday. We should probably do something for St. Patty's Day or something. I don't know. How do you make Mozart about St. Patrick? I don't know. Let's figure it out. So they're good about that when things are going on. But it's very quiet right now. So it's a very easy time to be a part of a social media team if you're looking for an easy job that doesn't pay anything.
Miles, I've loved your 1-second videos too that you've been sharing. Could you talk a little bit more about how you were inspired to make those?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a great app. It's free, and I think it's for Android and iPhone, called 1SE, 1 second every day. And you can subscribe as well, and then you get more features in the app. But basically you take a little video and then you pick what second you want to show. And then you do that every day. And then it makes a compilation of your month. It's just like a real quick flash of what you've done over the month or over the year or over how many days you want to choose. So I saw a friend doing this, and I loved it. I thought it was such a cool video, and it reminds you, like, my life feels pretty boring right now. And then when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, look at all the food we made, or look at all the, oh, I remember that, or whatever. So I started doing that in April 2017, and I've done it basically every day, sometimes multiple videos a day. It's very easy, though. The app is very easy. I would not do it otherwise. But if I were to watch that now, it'd be like a 2-hour compilation. And now you can choose more than a second. And 1 second is actually very, very short. You can barely tell what's going on in a video. So I usually do about 2 or 2.5 now. But I have many, 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 many days strung together. And I always publish it on Facebook near the first of the month is the 1 second every day. So that's been a long-going project. And I thought I would do it for a year and call it a day. And then, on day 366, I was like, what, am I going to not do a video? Get out of here. Get your video. Get your phone out. So I don't know when I'm going to stop. Never.
Taylor Gamble has asked a question around performance anxiety in music. So do you ever get stage fright during performances or rehearsals? If so, has it gotten better over the years? Do you have any advice for coping with anxieties while playing? Anything that could combat that mental flight reaction when our fight or flight instincts are triggered?
Yeah, great question. Yes, yes, yes. Do I ever get it? Do I ever not get it? No. I have it all the time when I'm playing the bassoon. Never while talking, I'm comfortable here. I'm comfortable in front of an audience talking. But man, with the bassoon, it's a completely different thing. I think it's always been a part of my life. I was going to say, it wasn't so bad when I was younger, but I had some crash and burn moments in my, 5th grade piano recital, that sort of thing. Some really bad, go sit down, couldn't play the piece. The family flew in to see it, and they saw nothing but me crying. Some bad stuff. So I've hit the bottom a few times. And actually, when I joined this orchestra, I think that made it worse. Because if I put myself and my personality in the shoes of the audience, I would be expecting a lot from me. Like, oh, okay, Chicago Symphony, let's see what you got. And that makes me crumble. And so, because I remember expecting only the best from my teachers. And if they had a recital that wasn't so good, I was actually mad at them. It's like, what is your excuse? You're old and have this great job. What's the big deal? You get paid to practice. I was really hard on them, in my mind. And now I would, no, okay, take it all back. It's so hard. So, I think not to go back over something we've already talked about, but that's kind of the most exciting thing for me. That's where my hope lies in this practicing the relaxation as part of the piece. I think I've been practicing the tension into the piece, imagining all the expectations of everyone and what could go wrong at this faster tempo and all that. And instead of putting my sights on those negative things, thinking about the positive things and only using necessary tension, hopefully will help me find a little more ease, whether there's someone in the room or not. I also want to have another little conversation with my former teacher, Ben Kamens, who's gotten really into Alexander technique, which I thought was only about physical posture. I had no idea that it had anything to do with performance anxiety, but he mentioned that in this McQuigley symposium that I mentioned earlier that I attended, and that it's all the same thing. The mind and the body are connected. And so, performance anxiety is about the body as well. It crosses over. And so it was very interesting hearing him talk about that. And he only mentioned it for a moment, but already what he said was like, whoa, this is what I need. This is important. The physical tension and the mental tension and all that, because I have a fair amount of mental tension, no matter how much I practice something. It's fight or flight in this question, but for me also freeze, fight or freeze. And usually I have a deer in the headlights moment in the middle of a passage, which is not very helpful. I rarely run off stage or punch my bassoon. It's usually a freeze. So I'm excited about changing the practicing a little bit so that maybe ease is a part of the preparation, which I didn't realize. I thought ease or a lack of stage fright was something you earned after you did all the practicing, that it would just magically appear. Like, I've now practiced and now I am at ease. And I think it's not the case for me. I think the ease is part of what I need to be repeating in the passages that I am repeating. So yeah, stage fright, yeah, I do get that.
Richard Meek has asked a question about how did you get started on contra and why did you select the Mollenhauer?
Yeah, it was never my dream to play the contrabassoon. I don't know. It's still funny to me that I play the contrabassoon. A lot of people are really into it. That's great. They should be playing it. I feel like I'm living. I like it too, but I feel like I'm living someone else's dream life or something. I was like, sorry, I'm living it for you. I didn't mean to take it. But it's lovely. How I got started is when I was at the University of Texas in Austin. That's also where the Austin Symphony rehearses, or at the time, back in the day. And because they would use university facilities to do their rehearsals, and then they would play just a few blocks away in a non-university building for the concerts. Anyway, their contrabassoon player disappeared. He's fine now, but he literally disappeared. No one knew where he was. His house was empty. He just skipped town. And they had a 0% requirement for contract, so he wasn't in trouble either. He could just leave. So they thought, we need someone to play the contrabassoon. Anyway, because of connections we had made, they knew they could call me and that I could just kind of figure it out. So it was sort of, baptism by fire. A lot of fire, by the way. So anyway, so I was getting a lot of contrabassoon experience, more than I asked for sure. Playing in the Austin Lyric Opera and playing the Austin Symphony and, playing all these big parts, Shostakovich symphonies and operas and all sorts of things. I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to play the bassoon. I'm trying to go to school for bassoon. Why am I playing this contrabassoon? So I was playing a lot of both. So that's how I got started. And then once you've got contra experience, you become the contra guy, and then you're done. And so I went to grad school, and people are like, wow, you're pretty good at contra. Shh, no, be quiet. They're like, oh, I hear it. It's pretty good. And, and then it was just contra from then on. So then Kansas City, they had an emergency 1-year position that they needed filled without an audition. So the principal bassoonist called their former teacher, Ben Kamens. That's my former teacher. Anyone that just graduated can play the contra. Of course, he thought of me. Why? Because I played in Austin a lot. So then I got this random phone call. Hey, do you want to move to Kansas City? Yes, I do. So I was doing nothing. So moved to Kansas City, and now I'm really playing the contra. I was associate principal in contra in Kansas City. And then they needed a sub here in Chicago. Any of you civic students know of a bassoonist or that can play contra that's driving distance? Yes, Miles. He lives in Kansas City. So I subbed. It went well. So then I decided, okay, well, maybe I'll take one more contra audition because my mom lives in Chicago and the subbing went well. And so here I am. So that's how it happened. How I chose the actual Mollenhauer, well, Kansas City owned a Mollenhauer. And so I didn't own a contrabassoon. So when I went up for the emergency 1-year position, they said, just use our instrument. So I used the Mollenauer there. So I got used to that instrument. And so when it was time to buy my own, when I moved to Chicago, I kind of had the choice of, well, what do I want to play on? And the one thing I know is that the Mollenauer was a good fit. And I didn't know anything else. And so I was going to try some other instruments. I had tried some Foxes, and I think I had preferred some Mollenauers at the time, but not a lot of knowledge there. But I knew that there was this fancy, fast system contrabassoon that had, more buttons than an airplane, and it played itself, and it could play higher than a piccolo. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And so I thought I would try that. And so I went on a trip to go. Arlen Fast, by the way, the principal or the contrabassoonist in the New York Phil, is the most generous person in the world. He's also a genius. He's a scientist. So, of course, he was just going to let me go to New York and try his instrument and let me buy it if I wanted to. And it's in perfect condition, of course. He's very fastidious and all that. So I was like, well, this is a great opportunity to at least try the Fast system with the guy, and he can show me what some of these buttons do. And so, anyway, so I had to fly through Detroit, landed in Detroit. They kicked us off the plane. They said, we got to redo the runway. It's going to be like a 4-hour layover, so figure something out. Well, 4 hours? Geez, I'm going to go to, another terminal and eat lunch and come back. So I was gone 20 minutes. I came back. At that point, they had already boarded the entire plane and flown away. So I was like scrambling, like, what? So I tried to get to New York. We don't have any more flights to New York. Oh, well, I guess then send me back to Chicago. So anyway, 24 hours or 14 hours later, I was back in Chicago where I started, having not played any instruments. And also the turnover from the audition to starting was very short. So that was it. The window of opportunity blown. So that literally was one of the reasons I don't play a fast system. It's because I never got to try it. And I was like, well, I guess it's Mollenauer then. So, I mean, it was ridiculous reasoning. I was hoping that the instrument would be just like the Kansas City one, but the Kansas City one was 40 years old and this one was brand new. I might as well just switch to English horn. They were so different. So that ended up being a disaster at the time. But the instrument is fine now, although I was very angry with it at the time because it was so different. So that's how I chose Mollenauer. Not for any reason like, I mastered all three and then I chose the winner or anything like that. It was literally stuck in an airport and it was like, okay, I guess American Airlines has decided that I'm going to play Mollenauer.
Miles, could you share a bit more about how you navigate bassoon and contrabassoon and any tips that come to mind for someone playing both of those and how to have success with both instruments?
Sure. At least for me, if I'm in shape, well, this holds true until you don't play very much contra at all during a pandemic. So you can take this too far. But generally, if I'm in shape on the bassoon, then the contra takes care of itself to a certain degree. If I'm just in shape on the contra, that doesn't mean anything for the bassoon. I like to make my reeds so that they are very responsive and comfortable on the contrabassoon. And so in terms of switching back and forth, I think it's at least the way that I make reeds, I want it to be so that it's the biggest hurdle is the mental hurdle. Not that I have some beast of a reed. I think a lot of contra players like to play on a tree, basically, on the end of their instrument. And maybe for good reason. I feel like a tree can contain this crazy sound of a contra a little better than something that's over-scraped, something like that. But I feel like there's a middle ground there somewhere. And I think after a while, if you're thrown into a job, like I was very lucky to be thrown into that initial position in Kansas City, there's going to be some pieces where you have to just go back and forth. And it's like, does anyone realize that this is actually not ideal? Too bad. Got to go back and forth. You just kind of get used to not worrying about it and just picking up the instrument and just blowing into it and trusting that you know what's going to come out. And after a while, it gets better and easier with time. You can also practice that. I've done that. I think one of the Shostakovich cello concertos is so rude. It starts on contrabassoon. The first movement is just contra. And the second movement, you sit around. And the second movement, you come in on just these repeated low, quiet, low Bs in octaves with the first bassoon. And there's no one else playing. Except in my case, Yo-Yo Ma. I was looking over his shoulder at rehearsal like, what is your problem? Lovely experience. So I realized, oh, actually, I need to practice that. I needed to not just practice low Bs, I needed to practice low Bs after the instrument's been sitting there and I'm not warmed up. So that's what I did that week. Put the reed on, then leave the room, go watch something or do something or eat something, and then come in on a low B, like 10 or 11 in a row. Because, somewhere in the middle, there's extra tension at the end, so it's the last one, don't miss the last one, that sort of thing. So, yeah, just this, you can practice the switching by just switching at home. You don't only have to do it on stage, for sure. But something about the reeds, making sure you really know each reed and how much embouchure pressure and everything it really needs when it's been sitting there in the stand for a little while. It's important. You can practice it just like anything else.
Taylor has asked, what shape do you use for your contra reeds?
I use a fox shape right now. The only reason is until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was buying my contra reeds from, his name was David Brundage. And I found him through Singing Dog Double Reed Company, but he sells them all over the place. You can also buy them directly from him. BrundageBassoon@gmail.com. So anyway, great reeds. They're fantastic. In my opinion, they're fantastic. That's what I won my Kansas City audition on, and Chicago as well. They are a good one, of course, if cane matters. If it's good cane, it's going to be very responsive, virtually unmissable. Like, it's almost cheating. And I don't really say that lightly. They were quite excellent. And that's really important. When you are sitting around, they have to come in quietly. So they were really good at doing the specific job that contra needs to do. Not a great high register. I don't play on the high register. Who cares? And then the sound was contained even at loud volumes. I really liked that. It didn't sound like a chainsaw. So I played those for years. I bought so many from him. And they were a fox shape. So I did realize one day, you know what? David Brundage is about 30 years older than me, and if he retires right now, I'll have to retire. So that's no good. So I need to figure out how to make them myself. So I've been trying to reverse engineer a Brundage reed with mild success now. None at first. I thought it was going to be easy. It was not. But, I don't want to prod a little too much. It's his job right now. I don't want to just ask him for his secret recipe. But he's got a good setup going, and they pump out good reeds. I'm using a Reeds and Stuff profiler. It does very little work, so I have to really make a lot of good decisions myself. I think he has a profiler that make a lot of good decisions that happen to be good ones. So yeah, it's a fox shaper because I'm just trying to make the ones that I used to buy. Oh, and the disappearing contra player, that guy's name was John Upchurch. I don't know where he is. Oh, obviously. I think people eventually figured out where he was, or he came and did a show. Oh, well, he's alive. What? And it was years later. No one had heard a peep. He had been colleagues with these people for decades. Very interesting. Good, very talented musician, multi-instrumentalist, and also a great magician, but particularly disappearing.
Martin has asked, how do you deal with the impossible instrument switches when you play in such a high-level orchestra?
Like I said, you just have to, you can just practice the switches at home. If you have a hard entrance, make it that same difficulty at home and let the instrument just sit there and get cold and make your mouth just forget what it was supposed to be doing. And then when you attempt to come in on that bad entrance, that tough entrance, whatever comes out, too flat, nothing, too sharp, loud, soft, accented, whatever, remember what that is, because it's not just wrong, it's actually information. You know, the instrument's speaking to us through sounds, and then we're speaking to it with fingers and wind. And so it gives us a little info, like, if you do that, this is what happens. That's good to know. Usually people go, oh, that's not what I wanted, and they ignore. But it's actually like, no, oh, that was information that I needed to know. This reed, when I leave it in the stand, comes in a little too flat on that note when I do this, blah, blah, blah. It's complicated, but there's a lot of info there. And so that's what it, like in that Shostakovich cello concerto, it's like, I just need to figure out how to interact with a reed that's a little bit over-soaked and then dried and sitting there. That's just a different reed. It's not necessarily bad. It's not what I would pick, but it's just different. And it's gonna be what I'm playing on that entrance. So I can just practice interacting with that reed. I think my initial folly at the beginning of that week in my preparation is I was doing long tones on a reed that I was comfortable and I was just playing just then and I'm playing again. Well, that's not what it is if you sit there for 20 minutes and then come in. It's a different instrument. So just practice that actual thing. And in terms of high level orchestra, low level, it doesn't matter what level orchestra. You're always trying to sound your best. You know, that's not really changed for me and for anyone here. I mean, you have this inner bar that you're trying to reach. And so Kansas City, same thing, or anywhere, any little gig or anything, you're just trying to sound your best. And, you know, that's all I'm trying to do. So.
Michael has shared a story. Yeah, I got to be prepared for anything. I had a nasty situation playing contra and bassoon in Mahler 9. Had a really comfortable contra reed that felt great and sounded good during the dress rehearsal. And reaching to insert the low A extension in the third movement, my elbow bumped and smashed the contra reed. In the dress rehearsal, yeah. So that was a stressful afternoon, finding a new reed for the concert. I managed to squeak out the fourth and fifth movement solos in the rehearsal on a backup reed. Thank you for sharing.
No way.
Yeah.
Those solos do not come out on any reed either.
I also got my one and only, I think, review as a contra player in that concert, where they referred to the pungent contrabassoon solos. And I was like,
Very Very nice. Oh my God, yeah, that's quite an afternoon. Not how you probably were planning on spending it.
What's something new that you've learned recently?
I've learned that my wife is better cook than my mom. Didn't know that. Yes. I thought my mom was the best, and she is very good. But she can't follow a recipe, which is a pro and a con. She's very, if she had, whatever is in the kitchen, she'll make something. And I think that's really cool, that level of, whatever you call it, improvisation in the kitchen. No fear with that at all. But no recipe following ability. Carolyn, my wife, has both. She's learned the improvisation skill from my mom, and then also absorbs energy from the recipes. So it's not just improvisation of just throw whatever note you want. She's got the theory behind it. She's like the jazz player with the classical chops. So that I have learned recently, and I was quite excited about that.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to chat with you, and thank you everyone so much for joining in.